Back in 2013, when I was around 17, my family was checking out a house. The owner showed up to talk with my parents. He seemed like a nice older man and mentioned that he had built the house himself. I stayed back, watching as everyone talked. While the owner was chatting and laughing with my parents, there was a moment when the conversation paused. Then suddenly he turned away from them, and his expression completely changed. His happy face turned into the most sinister and hateful look I had ever seen. I don't think he saw me watching him. It probably looked like I was on my phone since my head was down, but I was keeping an eye on him the whole time. As soon as he turned back to my parents, his face changed again, and he started smiling like nothing had happened. It gave me the creeps, and I felt a knot in my stomach. Later, I told my mom about what I saw. She agreed it was weird, but said maybe he was just socially awkward or something. She didn't seem too worried about it. We ended up buying the house anyway, thinking it was a great deal and a nice place to live. After we moved in, things seemed normal at first. Then the next weekend, my family decided to go to church. I wasn't in the mood to go, so I told them I'd stay home. They didn't mind and left me there alone in the house. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. So it was Sunday morning, around 11 a.m., when I heard really loud banging outside. The sound was rhythmic and coming from the side of the house. I was upstairs on the other side of the house, so I couldn't see what it was. Honestly, I thought it might just be the wind since it was a stormy day. I didn't think much about it and ignored it. After about 5 minutes, the banging stopped. Then about 10 minutes later, I started hearing footsteps downstairs. It sounded like someone walking around. I could hear chairs being moved, kitchen cabinets opening, and even the fridge door being opened. I quickly and quietly locked my bedroom door, trying not to make any noise. I grabbed my baseball bat from the corner of the room. Then I picked up my phone and called 911, my hands shaking as I told them my address and explained what was happening. While I was on the call, I sent a quick text to my mom. I tried to stay calm, but then I heard footsteps coming toward the stairs. The house is pretty thin, so I could hear exactly where the person was walking. Around that time, my mom texted back, saying she was on her way home. My mom was 30 minutes away, so there I was, a 17-year-old girl, just 5'2" and barely 100 pounds, hiding in my room. I knew if he got in, he could easily overpower me and take the bat. I was so scared I could barely think straight. I heard him walking down the hallway, getting closer to my door. Then I saw the handle turn. It stopped because the door was locked. He just stood there. He didn't move. I could hear his breathing through the door. Those 10 seconds felt like the longest of my life. I heard him turn around and walk back down the hallway. Then I heard the back door open and shut. About 3 minutes later, the police arrived. The 911 operator asked if I could let them in or if they needed to break the door. Since I was sure he had left, I went downstairs and let them in. But when they checked the house, there was no one there. No signs of forced entry, nothing at all. It was like he had just disappeared. When my mom got home, she looked at my stepdad and asked if he had changed the locks. He said he hadn't. The creepiest part, and what really proved my story, was the hallway. My mom had just vacuumed it earlier that day, so it was spotless. But now there were shoe prints, bigger than anyone in our house could have made. The police hadn't gone upstairs, so the prints couldn't be theirs. And the prints stopped right outside my bedroom door. We changed the locks the next day and added extra security. But I never felt safe in that house again. Even now, I get chills thinking about how close I was to whoever, or whatever, was on the other side of that door. My wife and I bought a house in rural Missouri, which was built in 1997. Now, the first owner passed away in 2022 after a serious illness. While he was sick, he stayed in a room that wasn't the master bedroom. His wife lived there for many years after he was gone. She didn't want to sell the house, but had to, because she couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments. When we first started moving in, we stayed at a hotel 20 miles away. The house used to be a horse ranch and is deep in the countryside. Then one day, I turned on a hallway light and left it on all day and night, but I found it turned off 3 times that same day. This hallway is very dark, and it's near the bedroom and bathroom where the man stayed when he was sick. My wife and I were busy moving in, so we kept going back and forth between Walmart, the hotel, and grabbing food during the day. It was a lot of running around, and we were both tired. When I finally got back to the house, I noticed the hallway light was off again. I casually asked my wife if she had turned it off. She looked confused and said, "No. Why?" Feeling frustrated, I told her it must have been her. When I looked at the light switch, it was clear that it clicks on and off firmly. Earlier that same day, I was the first one to go into the house while my wife was in the barn, about 200 feet away. We had left our dogs in the laundry room overnight, and this was the first time we came back to the house that day. I went out onto the back patio through the sliding door and opened the outside door to the laundry room to let the dogs out. I stepped into the laundry room and closed the door behind me. I tried to turn the laundry door handle. It doesn't lock, but I couldn't move it at all. It wouldn't budge. So I went back out to the patio and into the house through the sliding door. When I tried to open the laundry door from the inside, it opened easily with no problem at all. The door and hardware are in great shape, almost like new. Maybe this means nothing, but it felt strange. I decided to leave the hallway light on again. We went out for dinner and came back in the evening. The hallway light was still on. That night we put the pugs in the laundry room and left for the hotel. When we came back the next day, we found the pugs had gotten out of the laundry room and chewed up several things. Now we have an ADT alarm system with motion detectors inside, but it didn't go off, and the dogs were all over the house. We drive trucks for a living, so we're away for a week or 2 at a time. Normally at our old house, a lady takes care of our animals. But here's the thing. How could a small dog reach up and pull down on the door handle, not a knob, to open the door, if it has to be pulled down and opens towards you? The dogs aren't tall enough to reach the handle. So how could the dog get out 3 times like this, night after night? It would be easy to see if the dog jumped up, pulled the handle down, and the door pushed out. But the door has to be pulled inward after the handle is pulled down to get out. What's strange is that every time we got back, the door was always closed when the dogs got out. I gave the handle a quick pull down, and the door swung open inward on its own. But it seems impossible for the door to close by itself because it only swung inward, away from closing. Someone would definitely have to pull it closed. My dogs aren't smart enough to close the door, or they would have been stuck inside like they were when I put them in there. If this doesn't make sense to you, maybe what happened next will. On the 4th night, I was going to open the door to the bedroom where the sick owner stayed before going into hospice care. I pulled down on the door handle, but it wouldn't move. Not only was it stuck, but the door didn't have any give in it at all. Before this, the door had a little movement when I went in. It felt like something on the other side was using all its strength to push against the door. The handle wouldn't move. It's a lockable handle, as I pushed on it, but then suddenly, it gave way like someone had quickly let go of it. This really scared me. and I almost ran outside to my wife in the pickup. The door handle made no noise when it released, none at all. It was more than spine-tingling. It really scared me. I was so scared I can't even explain it. Right now we aren't living in the house because it flooded a few weeks ago. We're back in California, waiting for possible repairs. Since we've been here in California, the alarm has gone off several times. The last alarm went off a few days ago. A DT said the front door was opened and there was motion in the front room, but the officer said everything was secure. This has happened twice. It's been quiet since then, but we're not sure if we want to live there even after the house is repaired. As believers, we're not sure what to do. We tried blessing the house, but some of this strange stuff has happened even after we left. Evil definitely exists, but I don't want it in my house. This is not a joke. God forbid that alarm goes off in the middle of the night again. Most people watch those ghost hunter shows and don't take them seriously, but I do. I don't think I can stay in the house alone. So far, my wife hasn't been bothered by anything. I told her if we do move back in, I'm putting a lot of crosses all over the house. The owner's wife lied about the property to make a sale, and I was so upset that I destroyed an item they left on the property that was meant for a dead relative. The house was also left with a lot of trash. I've tried to fix what I destroyed, but I can't find the missing pieces after all these months. A few years ago, my mom, my brother, and I moved from downstate to upstate New York after we finished high school. And we ended up in a neighborhood mostly filled with older people. Our house used to belong to an elderly couple, but they didn't pass away. They just moved out. In the first year of living there, not much strange stuff happened. The only thing was hearing footsteps in my mom's bedroom upstairs while I was in the basement. I was the only one home, so it was odd. I tried to tell myself it was just house noises, but I didn't really believe that. That same year, on Thanksgiving morning, I was in charge of loading all the food we made into the car parked in the driveway. It was a chilly morning, and I was rushing a little to make sure everything fit without messing up the pies or casseroles. As I carefully placed the last pie into the car, I suddenly heard an older woman's voice behind me. She said, "You'd better be careful with that." She sounded like she was teasing me. I clearly remember rolling my eyes since I was facing the house and had my back to her. I put on a polite smile, ready to turn around and chat with her. But when I turned around, there was no one. I looked up and down the street, thinking maybe the old woman had been walking by and moved along, but I didn't see anyone. For a moment, I thought I must have imagined it, but it felt too real to be in my head. I figured it had to be my brother playing a joke on me, maybe pretending to sound like an old lady. I checked the porch and the garage to find him, but he wasn't there either. My mom came outside right then, and I asked her if she had told me to be careful. She said no, and looked confused. I think that was the day I started to believe in ghosts, or whatever that was. A month later, during winter break, I was back at home, curled up in my bed. Everything was quiet until I suddenly heard a soft sobbing sound coming from somewhere nearby. The crying sounded muffled, so I thought it might be my mom. I was about to go check on her when she texted me. "Hey, are you okay?" I replied, "Yes, why?" She said, "I heard crying and thought it was you." I told her I thought it was either her or the dog, but she said no. The dog was asleep at the end of her bed. We both decided it must have been the wind, or maybe a coyote, but to me, it sounded way too human and way too sad to be either of those. Then one day I asked my mom what she thought about everything. The footsteps, the old woman, and the crying. She said she thinks it might be Grandma. My grandmother, her mom, had passed away about 6 months after we moved into our new house. I asked her why she thought it was Grandma. She said sometimes she hears knocking on her door and thinks it's me or my brother. But then she remembers we're both away at college. I didn't tell my mom, but I don't think it's Grandma. She never came to this house because she got sick the day we moved in and never got the chance to visit. Also, the voice I heard on Thanksgiving didn't sound like her at all. Grandma's voice was soft and calm, but this voice was sharp and unpleasant. When I was about 12 years old, living in Kansas, something really disturbing happened that I'll never forget. So I was in my room, sitting on the floor playing Halo on my old Xbox. My parents had gone out to run errands, and my older sister was working a shift at her job, so I was home alone. Well, not completely alone. I had our 2 dogs with me. One was a little terrier, and the other was a Bichon Frise. They weren't big guard dogs, more like little alarms that barked at anything unusual. I had stayed home alone before, so it wasn't a big deal. We lived in a pretty safe neighborhood, where nothing bad ever really happened, except for one time when someone spray-painted KKK graffiti on some park equipment nearby. Anyway, I was relaxing in my chair, fully in gamer mode. I had a bag of Doritos in one hand and my controller in the other, totally focused on my game. That's when I heard it. The clear sound of my front door opening and then closing, like someone had just come into the house. The room I was in faced the backyard, so I couldn't see the front door or who might be coming in. When I heard the sound of the door opening and closing, my 2 dogs immediately perked up and bolted into the living room. I thought it must be my parents coming home early. Maybe they'd finished their errands faster than expected, but still something about it felt off. Just to be sure, I called out, "Mom? Dad? Is that you?" My voice echoed through the house, but no one answered, which made me feel a little nervous. I've always been a bit paranoid, probably because strange things seem to happen around me. My dogs weren't barking like they usually do when someone comes home, and that felt strange. I paused my game and got up to check. I walked into the living room, but there was no one there. That's when I started to feel uneasy. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I was sure I had heard someone come in. I wasn't wearing headphones and the TV was turned down low. I had music playing softly in the background, so I knew the sound didn't come from my game. As soon as I realized something was off, I went straight to my parents' closet and grabbed my baseball bat. That's just what you do in the Midwest when you think there might be trouble. You get ready to defend yourself. So I walked back into the living room, holding the baseball bat in front of me like I knew what I was doing. I decided to call my dad first, but he didn't answer. Then I tried my mom. No answer from her either. Feeling more nervous, I called 2 of my best friends, but they didn't pick up either. My 12-year-old brain immediately jumped to the worst possible thought. What if something terrible happened to all of them? For the first time in my life, I decided to call 911. The 911 operator told me to stay calm and said the police were on their way. But staying calm wasn't easy. There was a hallway near my front door, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was hiding there, waiting to jump out and scare me. Or worse. My 2 dogs were right next to me, both staring at the hallway too. That made it even harder to stay calm. If they were acting like something was wrong, I knew I wasn't imagining things. My fear kept growing, and I couldn't take my eyes off that hallway. I stood there, frozen in place, for what felt like forever. but it was probably only a few minutes. The operator kept telling me to stay calm. Just then, thankfully, my parents opened the front door. My dad looked at me and asked, "What the heck are you doing?" I quickly explained what was going on. He didn't waste any time. He grabbed his pistol from the front room, and we got ready to check the house. I always thought it would be cool to go around clearing rooms like a SWAT team. But man, I was so scared every time we opened a bedroom door. My heart was racing. We didn't find anything, though. The police showed up soon after, and they told us that this kind of thing had been happening for the past few weeks. Apparently, people were waiting until homeowners left, checking the door, and if it was unlocked, they'd go in and steal things. The police said whoever it was probably left when they heard someone was home. But that didn't sit right with me, because I only heard the door open and close once.